Welcome to the podcast where relationships, confidence, and determination all converge into an amazing, heartfelt experience. This is Speaking from the Heart.
Welcome back to episode number 168 of Speaking from the Heart. Today we have Catherine Sipher with us, and Catherine wears two creative hats, a writer and a poet, in which she has founded the Blossom Piano Studio, which is a platform for remote piano instruction. Through her poetry collection, Barely a Whisper, Poetry from the Heart of a Woman Rebecoming, Catherine empowers women on their journeys of self-discovery and transformation. Her poems give voice to their struggles, celebrate their strength, and ignite their belief in their worth. As a piano teacher with over 20 years of experience, Catherine's mission is to help adult musicians of all ages and abilities find joy and fulfillment in their musical practice through her remote private lessons and practice journal, Notes to Self, a guided mindful practice journal. Outside of her creative pursuits, Catherine can be found in nature, practicing yoga, and spending time with her 6 children. This busy lady certainly had a lot to share, not just through the power of music, but how her perspective today really gives us an enthusiasm that has all kinds of different qualities. I love when I see people like this on the show because not only do they bring an interpersonal connection to it, but she shares something that oftentimes that we forget. Come as you are enough. That phrase, especially when I heard it later on in our interview, really perked my curiosity, not only about what she brings to the table for so many individuals, both young, middle-aged, and older, especially when it comes to her piano instruction, but also how she pays attention to so many other types of things that are happening around her, creating that connection, but more importantly, finding that passion through what she loves, her music. You can find your own passion in so many different ways, and I hope that Catherine's story today, especially with the reason why she started this, really helps you to understand that it isn't just about the traditional ways in which we can express ourselves, but it's the creative ways, just like music and poetry, that can help us become the best versions of ourselves. But with that, let's go to the episode. All right, we're here with Catherine Sipher. Catherine, thanks for sharing your heart with us today.
I'm so honored to be here today.
I love that you're here. You have broken another record here on Speaking from the Heart already by your background, which I've already shared with the audience. I love the fact that you deal with music, you deal with piano specifically, and I've had music teachers on the show before, but nothing quite like you do. So I actually just want to jump right into it. What got you interested into the creative arts? Because I noticed that you like to write, you have a poetry book out there, you have all kinds of things that you do on YouTube with piano lessons that I was watching before we even started this. I am so infused by how much talent you have. So I'm just wondering, what got you started in all of that?
I got started with piano when I was about 8 years old. We were, as a family, hanging out with another family, and I was 8. I think I was hanging out with a little girl who was about 6 years old, and she was playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on the piano. And at that point, even at age 8, I must have had really low self-confidence because I remember thinking or even saying, there's no way I could ever do that. That's like amazing what you're doing. And she's like, oh, you could totally do that. Let me teach you. And she showed me. And then her mom happened to be a piano teacher. So her mom turned into my first piano teacher. And sadly, that family moved out of town at the end of that year, and I moved to another piano teacher. But that kind of was the beginning of the end. I very quickly fell in love with the piano, excelled pretty quickly at it. And by the time I made it to high school, I had added a couple of more instruments and knew that I wanted to be a piano teacher when I grew up, and even started teaching piano when I was in high school. Went to college for music, and that's kind of the end. Went on to teach piano, and that's how I got into it.
Why specifically the piano? I mean, there's so many different musical instruments to choose from. So I'm just curious, even outside of what you have shared, that it was an influence from a friend that's mom really created that. What drew you into the piano?
I'm not really sure. That's a great question. I've never been asked that question before. We had a piano at home, and I think my mom knew how to play a little bit. There has definitely been some history of music in my family. My mom played clarinet and I guess a little bit of piano. My grandmother played clarinet and piano, apparently pretty good based on some of her old sheet music. So I think that music has just kind of always been there. My parents always played a lot of classical music in the home when I was growing up as well. So that's definitely my genre is more the classical music set. But I think it was accessibility. It was there because then when I went on to add a band instrument, of course, I added the clarinet because that was kind of the family lineage. Also added sousaphone in there for marching band for good measure to get a little brass in there. And I went to school for both piano and clarinet and studied both of them in college. And now I only play piano. And there was a time in there where I kind of dropped the piano for a little bit, thinking that I needed to focus more on the clarinet. And then the tides reversed and I came back to my first love. And what I love about the piano specifically is that it can be such a solo endeavor. You can really do it for a lifetime. You don't need an ensemble to feel like you're getting a full musical experience. It can be you with your instrument, which means, I've got a long time I can still enjoy my instrument.
I love that because that gives you a lot of variety. It gives you a lot of diversity when it comes to the different rhythms and sounds. And it's interesting because as I hear this, I almost hear myself when I coach my public speaking clients about using your vocal variety, using your range. So I never thought in a million years that I'd be talking to someone that kind of ties all that together too. I have to ask, and I'm sure you get asked this a lot, who's your favorite composer or musician that you usually play music from? Do you have an artist that you usually lean towards? You said that you do a lot of classical. Is there some type of old genre or somebody that you really admire playing? And if so, who is that and why?
I would say my favorite is probably Debussy. He's from the Impressionist time period. I just feel like the soundscapes that he makes, he paints these beautiful pictures with sounds. And I just really get into the slight dissonance and the tonal qualities of Debussy's music. Chopin's music, I think, is amazing. And I'm really drawn to a lot of his really somber, sad pieces of music, which is actually a big part of my story is returning to consistent playing at the piano through Chopin because it was balm to my soul in a really hard time in my life.
I find it interesting, especially with the music genre, the music industry as a whole. Either you see it where people really want to break into it. I know I have musician friends that have been playing for a number of years. They have a band and they trying to get into it. But the other dynamic that I keep seeing that I really get worried about is kids having an opportunity to learn music. And I know growing up myself, which I'm not all that old, and my listeners know that I'm only in my later 30s, Catherine. So it isn't like I'm looking at 60, 70 years old like a long time ago. No, it's not like that. But I often see the struggles with school districts and even other people trying to fund music programs and such. How do you feel that you fit into that broader landscape? Because I feel like you provide an important service to people that do want to learn how to play a music instrument or the piano specifically. So I'm wondering how you kind of help bridging some of that gap, if you don't mind explaining.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a bit of a cultural arts crisis in the world. I think kids and my own kids are on screens too much and they're not as active in the creative pursuit in general. Of course, there's plenty of exceptions to that rule. And there is lower funding in the school, or you've got music teachers that are doing the very best that they can and they're fantastic people and teachers, but they're stretched because they're being asked to do so many things. I'm really thankful that I was able to grow up in some stellar, I think, music programs with consistent teachers and directors. But my piano teacher was the biggest role model for me in my musical career because I studied with her from my fourth grade up through a senior in high school. And then I had my college professors. But when you think about the length of time, my formative years were spent with this one teacher all those years. And that makes a really big impact. And these are people that you get to know on a personal level. And I mean, she knew me when I was 9. And then when I was a senior, like that's a big difference. And so as a teacher, I love getting to watch my students grow as people and expand and blossom. The name of my piano studio is Blossom Piano Studio for that reason, because there's so much interpersonal growth that happens for music students, both of youth and adults. I teach adults too. And you really see that the art of music, the study of music, the obstacles we have to overcome while we're studying it, there's so much inner work that is happening in the process of learning how to play an instrument or play in ensembles when you have those ensemble opportunities too. But as a private piano teacher, and I teach all remote lessons too, which is really great. I can reach students from wherever. They don't have to be local. I really get to be a part of their lives and help shape their experiences of music. So one of the things we do beyond what they just study, but for what they're playing, we learn a different composer every month. They get to learn about the history of the composer and get exposed to the music that they wrote and experiment with playing songs that that composer wrote too. So I feel like I've got a really important role in helping expand the art and helping students access the art. Whether they become a performer or not, they're developing a deeper understanding of music and the arts so they can appreciate it better. So we have people that still want to go to the concerts. I think it's really important.
I'm sure my listeners have been wondering all along because obviously I shared with them that you have 6 kids. How do you balance 6 kids and having a full clientele with them practicing all kinds of different composers every month? How do you do it? I'm sure that there's some people that want to learn the secrets of how do you balance that?
Well, I think I have been given a very unique drive in life and energy. I honestly don't sleep a lot. And I work very hard, and some of that could be a little bit of a trauma response there. So I identify that. I'm also learning how to be and not always do. But yeah, it's a balance. I'm really thankful that I do actually teach remote lessons because I'm a single mom. I got divorced about 4.5, 5 years ago. And so now I'm balancing raising the 6 kids and running my business. And by teaching remotely, it's actually worked really well. I've trained the kids to stay out of my office, do what they need to do during the hours because I'm in business for myself and I'm in my own house. I don't have people coming in and out of my house. I'm not at a studio someplace else to hire childcare. And I can also make my own hours. So there's plenty of music teachers that are teaching on Saturday and Sunday and well into the evenings. And that is wonderful and fabulous. And we need them to do that because sometimes that's when some people only have the availability to go take those lessons. But I really monitor when I am working so that I can be with my children as much as possible. So I try to teach during the day when my kids are at school to maximize my time that I have with them. And then I stay up late and I work. There's no mystery here.
But you're doing something that I think for many of us, we often feel like we're stuck in a 9 to 5 job and we have no place to go. I feel that sometimes, even after all this time, even having my own business, I still work a full-time job and building that consistency, building that direction of where I want to go. It does take a lot of sacrifice, but I love that you've taken a passion, you turn it into something that you can teach others while balancing the demands of being what a single mom is. So kudos to you being a successful business entrepreneur and managing all of that. I think that is a unique balance to say the least, which leads me into wanting to talk more about your business. So you've already mentioned the name of your business is Blossom Piano Studio, and you said that you do these remotely. So I'm kind of curious with your background, you've been doing this for over 2 decades from what it says on your website, which for my listeners, I'll put in the episode notes. Can you tell us what could we experience being a client that we could get over the Zoom or over any sort of platform that might be different than, say, going to meet somebody in person and have those piano lessons? I mean, I'm sure that some people are skeptical when they hear that, thinking, how do I know where to put my fingers on the keys, especially with pianos? I mean, personally, myself, I never played the piano. My grandmother had an organ when she was in her house when I went to visit, but never learned how to play it. She also had a piano too. So it was all kinds of different musical talents. But I sit back and I think, man, I wonder how you do that. So I wonder if you could break that down for us, how that would actually work.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I didn't know if it would work either, but I was walking through a divorce at the height of COVID. And so I knew that I needed to somehow support my family. So I went from being a stay at home homeschooling mom to being a single mom that needed to somehow bring in an income. And at the time, my youngest was 1. So I was like, what am I going to do? Childcare is so expensive. The whole world has shut down. Right. So it's been this grand experiment that now has been really successful and is a very valid way to teach for the past 4.5 years. The way that I do it, we use Zoom as the platform, but my students and I both put two videos on our screen. So we have that face to face connection with a video on our faces. And then we both have a video screen pointed at our instruments, our piano. So that way I can see what they're doing. I can demonstrate things for them as well. I can move camera angles to different places. But I think, again, that I don't want to teach just to bellies and to hands. I think facial expression is so important and be able to read my students' body language to see how they're feeling, how they're doing. Are they holding tension in their hands? Are they using their wrists right? Are they sitting too close, too far away? All those kinds of things. So I can see all of that. I've been in this world for long enough to be able to access that even through Zoom. And then I've got a couple other great tools and resources, like an app that I use to pass lesson notes back to the students, and a parent can access them too. And I can also upload videos and other things. So if it turns out that I can tell that my student needs an extra video training or tutorial, I can create a quick little video for them, pop it into that app, and they've got access to it 24/7 instead of just when they come to their next lesson, which I don't know that I ever would have moved to that kind of technology for note taking if I hadn't been forced onto the online platform.
It sounds like to me you meet the student with where they're at, whether that is using an app, using different camera angles. You're really trying to create this immersive experience, if I'm understanding what you're saying.
Absolutely. I believe that every person is unique and different. And so their learning style is slightly different. And I adjust and adapt based on what student I'm working with at the time. So some kids need that big hurrah, you're doing awesome. I'm so proud of you. And I've got like the jazz hands up and I'm like doing a little dance. And some of them are more reserved. So like we don't go quite that far. And every student is working on different things. They have different pieces of music that they want to learn. Of course, I'm still teaching from a very classical perspective in general, but we're still also learning how to play chord charts. And especially with my adults, it's a wide variety of what we're learning there because the adults, they kind of leave a little bit more that way. And I'm more of a coach to my adult clients. But yeah, I really pride myself on being their cheerleader and their guide and their encourager and building that relationship, so I know I've brought to tears many times in lessons when I'm like, oh my goodness, what you just did was huge for you. And I am celebrating that because I know what it took for you to do that. And I think that's really important. That personal connection is so important.
You touched on it with that answer, and I have to ask. I love that you teach from a variety of different ages. I noticed on your website, you mentioned that you've taught someone that is 76 years of age with the piano. And I'm wondering if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that experience with this person, how that helped them to gain some confidence in learning the piano. I wonder if you could talk about that.
Yeah, this was a really special gentleman. And I actually broke my virtual rule and I taught him in person.
So there is hope, ladies and gentlemen, that maybe if you're close to Catherine, that she will break the rule.
There is hope. He was this sweet man that had just moved to the town. And yeah, he was 76 years old. And I love his story. He started piano at age 65. And I just love that. He was not like, I've been playing this all my life. He started at age 65, had taken lessons from several professors at, pretty well known universities, and found me when he moved into town. And he's like, oh, well, I really want to learn this Brahms intermezzo. That's what I want to learn. I was like, oh, yes, let's do that. And I made an exception, and he did take lessons in my home while my kids were in school, and he was absolutely delightful. Sadly, he's battling brain cancer, and so the medicine that he's on has impacted his ability to concentrate as much as he would like to be able to sit at the piano as long as he wants to. But I really treasured this gentleman. I really loved my time with him because he would sit there and just really diligently work his way through this piece of music that was really challenging and maybe a little bit out of his reach. But, I'm going to sit there and encourage you. We're going to get this. We're going to figure this out. But he would play a chord and then just stop and listen to it and say, that wasn't that beautiful. And I would say, yes, it was. So we would just delight in the beauty of these chords and the chord progressions that Brahms had put together. And I was introduced to an absolutely beautiful piece of music I hadn't necessarily worked on before and just had a beautiful experience with this gentleman.
I love to hear stories of that nature because we all bring different types of perspectives to the table, regardless of how old we are. And I've been blessed enough, even with my business, to see a variety of different people. Not quite as old as that, but even then, I always feel like we're part of the success story for them when they see that aha moment, that light bulb that turns on for somebody. So I love hearing that. And I love that you're celebrating that as well. I want to pivot just a little bit because you do a lot of the piano, and obviously that's a big part of your business, but there's a different side of you, which is the writing aspect. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And one of the things that I shared, which you also shared with me, is that you have a poetry collection. It's called Barely a Whisper Poetry from the Heart of a Woman Rebecoming. I never heard of the phrase rebecoming until I read that. And I was like, is that grammatically correct? Was my first initiation because being a public speaker, I've got to make sure that I say things correctly, which sometimes I don't, even on this show. But even with that said, I found that you wrote this for a reason. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of why you express yourself in writing and why particularly this set of poetry that you've done.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know that rebecoming the word either, but I'm using it.
Hey, if you're using it, then that means I have credence to use it too. So thank you for
Yeah.
that permission.
Exactly. I've got a couple in there that are maybe real words, but we're going to go with them. Yeah. So it's taken me a while even just to accept that I'm a writer and a poet, but I was walking through a divorce and also deconstructing from my faith all at once at the same time that the whole world shut down and we had a global pandemic. The world went really, really quiet, really fast for me and really, really dark. And trying to make sense of it all, I started, I think it's Julia Cameron a suggestion from the book of The Artist's Way. And one of the things that she suggests in there is to have a ritual of morning pages where you just sit down, stream of consciousness, write 3 pages. Doesn't matter what you're writing, just write. Like, I don't even know what I'm writing. Why am I writing? What's going on? And you just write and you get it out. And I vomited on that page like my life depended on it. Any moment that I put more than 3 pages in when I first started this habit, I was doing it while kids were taking baths, while I was cooking, like wherever I was writing. And it was the first time in my life, or at least 20 plus years, that I had really even begun to hear my own voice. And I couldn't even hear my thoughts unless I wrote them down on a journal at that point. And so it was while I was writing in that journal that every now and then just a couple of lines of poetry would pop out, or I'd write something and think, oh my goodness, I think that's poetry. So I kind of like stuck that in the back of my mind and kept writing and kept writing and kept writing. And as I was on my healing process and journey through all of that, I started looking for various writing prompts, just to kind of like help me get out of the despair of what I was writing. Let's see if we can like turn the tide a little bit, find something else. And then it seemed like everything that was coming out in poetry instead of prose. I've been told before that my writing is powerful and good, but it had only ever really been written when I was giving medical updates on some of my kids have been through some medical crises. So I used to write updates and emails to people and people would say, oh, your writing's so beautiful. I'm like, oh, I didn't do so good with writing in English back in high school. So I don't know what you're talking about, but I just kept writing. And then as I was, again, re-envisioning my life and deciding what do I want to do with my life, I'm at this crossroads, what I want to do. And one of the things that I wanted to do was start using my writing for good to empower other women, to help women tell their stories, to help people access that vulnerable, authentic self part of themselves so they could find their own voice, so they could take agency over their lives. And one of the things I thought I needed to do was write my own memoir and at least start attempting to. So I hired a writing coach and started writing a bit of my memoir. And again, with all these writing prompts, poetry kept coming out. So I told my writing coach, like, hey, I think I've got like, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 of these poems. And she's like, well, throw them in a document. Let's see what you got. So I gathered them all together. I threw them in a document and then organized them based on chronologically as to how I wrote them, but just how much strength I could see in myself at that state in that poem. So they were very, not the poems aren't weak, but like my voice was very quiet. It was barely a whisper. And then learning how to find that strength and to believe in myself and to come be the hero of my own story and rescue myself. And so there's a line in there that talks about, well, what if now she's a roar? The voice is really loud now. So that's the story. And it might have been a long-winded way of saying that, but it was part of my own journey and it kind of accidentally happened. And it's taken a while for me to then say, oh, wait, yeah, this is poetry. And this is worthy to be shared. And hopefully people that read it will resonate with it and identify with it as they are in various stages of their own healing process.
The way you described that just now made me think about what you said earlier about why you do music. And I find the parallels to be fascinating. So I really want to ask you this. Hearing what you said about writing, hearing what you do with music, do you find it that those are your creative outlets of expression to be able to share what you've been through in this world? And if so, if you believe that's true, what do you think the message is that you're trying to share to, say, women? Since a lot of what you've been through, I would say, is directed to that. And even you say in the title of your poetry, it is directed towards women. What do you think you're trying to help accomplish or bring awareness to as a result of that?
I think right now my message is come as you are. You're enough. There were many years I didn't think that I was enough in the musical space. And I even called myself a former musician for over a decade because I didn't get my master's, because I didn't win the orchestra job, because for a while I wasn't teaching, because whatever, fill in the blank, like I wasn't doing things. And so I thought that that meant that I wasn't a musician and I couldn't claim that title for myself because I wasn't actively being a musician. I wasn't doing those things. And one of the things that has been a part of my journey has been coming back to piano. It was when I was at my rock bottom. Why did I find myself at the piano playing the saddest song I could possibly find? Well, because I'm a musician. That's part of the word they're rebecoming, you know? I was coming back to who I was, but in a different version. I'm playing, not that I should be in Carnegie Hall performing, but I am playing better than I have ever played before because there's something more settled about me now. There's something more confident about me now that knows that I get to do this for joy, not because I have to do it a certain way to make it wrong or right. And I think that ties with writing too. I mean, who am I to publish a book of poetry? Well, why can't I? Like, who am I not? I think we all have something valid to say. And as a teacher, why can't they study? Like, they need to study. Every form of musical expression is valid and worthy of being celebrated and seen and shared. I don't think we have to reach some certain level of some arbitrary standard in order for us to be able to share our art with others because our art is coming out of our soul. And if it's coming out of us and out of our soul, and we are worthy beings, we are worthy of just existing and being loved and cared for because we exist, then doesn't the art that comes out of our soul equally worthy of being seen and celebrated?
I've had so many different types of coaches. I've had people that have energy readings that they do. I've had people that have been successful business owners. The way you just said that just resonates with me. And I'm just going to read back to you what I wrote with what you just said. There is no standard. There's no high level that we have to prove to anybody. We could just exist. And I love hearing that. It's an expression that we don't have to be given a right to. It's already been given to us to give. So, with that said, how do you think you bring that out of people that you work with? Do you do that? And if so, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think it's in the little ways, you know, when my students playing for me and their hands are visibly shaking. You're like, okay, like we're on a screen, you know, I can't like jump through the screen and swat your hand with a ruler, maybe like the nuns used to do. You're safe, like you're so safe, right? But there's this thing that we get inside of ourselves that we feel like we have to do it right because somebody's going to tell us we're wrong. And yes, as a music teacher, I'm there to tell you you did it wrong. But like, I'm also there to tell you if we're going to do it right, we're going to figure this out. And you did awesome. You tried it. Yeah, you missed that rest, but we're going to get it this next time. I can't tell you how many times students apologize to me. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like, oh, I did this better before you were here. No, you deserve to exist in this space, however you happen to show up right now. And you don't need to be scared and you don't need to be nervous because whoever you are and however you're playing right now is enough. And yes, we're going to talk about it. We're going to correct your mistakes. We're going to continue to learn and make progress. But it's not about, I don't know, this ideal of like it has to be perfect. And yes, in classical world, we're trying to make it perfect. But do we really? We're here for joy. We're here for self-care. We're here to enjoy the arts. And yes, we can enjoy the arts while pursuing perfection in that and excellence in that, but nothing's ever perfect. So why are we pursuing perfection? Let's pursue excellence. And excellence can be wherever we are now, not some standard that's maybe 5 years from now from what we'll be able to reach.
I love everything that you said with that. I'm struggling to even ask a question from that because I just align with that even myself. And mainly the purpose of even having this discussion is to share those perspectives, to know that there is hope in even the things that we do. I guess my final question before I give you an opportunity to pitch yourself, Catherine, is you've shared so much about your experiences, what you've been through, what you've created, what you've endured to get to this point, which, needless to say, even 6 kids would make me feel exhausted, and I have 0 kids, by the way, for the record. But you said something that you even say on your website that touches upon this. You've had to rethink, reimagine, and bring creativity to what was, even 4 years ago, a very challenging time. So for my listeners, what's one piece of advice that they could do today to help rethink, reimagine, and bring that creativity, whether that's through music or through writing, or maybe something else that's moving you today that maybe you want to share with our listeners?
For me, and not everybody is one of these people, but for me, journaling has been key. It's been learning to tap into my inner voice because for so many years, my inner voice was told to me that it was wrong, that it could not be listened to, that it could not be trusted, and that anything of me was really not good, and that I needed to fill myself with everything else other than me, which meant that I lost who I was along the way. And so for me, this whole journey, this whole rebecoming journey, building a business in a global pandemic with 6 small children, learning to write and be a writer and publish and create this life that now, yes, days are still hard, but there have been moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, what's that in my chest? Oh, I think that's joy. I haven't felt that in I don't know how many years, right? Oh, that's what it feels like. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't because I had figured out how to tap into my intuition and trust that she knows what is best for me. And so I can't trust her if I can't even hear her voice. And for me, learning to hear my voice started with journaling. And that has really led me every step of the way. It informs my business, it informs my writing, and it informs my poetry, it informs the way that I parent, and informs everything about me.
Trusting the process. I love that. I think that it's just so simple enough, but it has many layers to it, of course, also. But I think that for all of us, we have to figure out how to write that out or even express ourselves in whatever way we feel comfortable. So I love that journaling is important. It's something that I continuously am working on myself to be able to better express too. And I know that it just takes discipline, which obviously you have perfected. You're doing that with your music. And with that, I'm going to ask you, Catherine, since we're at the end of our time, give us a few minutes here of how we can get in contact with you, how we can find out a little bit about maybe taking virtual piano lessons. I never thought I would be saying this on the show that, hey, everybody, you want to listen and maybe perhaps learn some piano? This is the time to do it. I've been always amazed by how these things come together. But anyway, how people can reach out to you in that regard. Maybe they want to contact you in general. I'm going to give you the last few minutes, Catherine, to pitch yourself. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So if you're interested in anything piano music related, you can find me at blossompianostudio.com. I've actually just recently published a journal that is called Notes to Self, a guided mindful practice journal that's designed specifically for adults to find mindful, intentional practice sessions that are full of celebration to help you kind of get over that hurdle of feeling frustrated or discouraged that you might feel while you're in a practice session. So put a lot of intentional thought and effort into creating a very positive practice journal for adults. So you can find all that and virtual lessons and all my other offerings there. And then if you're looking for my poetry, you can find all that information at catherinesipher.com.
I will put all of that in the episode notes. But to wrap up, Catherine, I have to say everything that you shared with me, wow, you have a ton of energy. And I don't know how you do it. Maybe it's coffee, maybe it's good genes. I don't know. But here's the secret that I think you have is that you're so passionate about what you're doing to help create that atmosphere, not just for yourself, but the people that you're working with, regardless of how old they are. And I love the fact that you balance all of that despite everything that you shared that you've been through, and you still have that giving heart and you're willing to compose that in a variety of ways and deliver that. Because watching your YouTube videos, which I watched some of your shorts and all that, you have an amazing talent. And I encourage my listeners to go check out your YouTube, which I'll also have, that has so many different things to offer for not only those that are beginning, but also inspiring. So for inspiring others and to become their authentic selves, Catherine, thank you so much for being on Speaking from the Heart today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I definitely encourage you to continue practicing your talent. It is amazing to hear your music.
Thank you so much. It's been such a joy to be with you today.
I want to thank Catherine again so much for being part of the show, sharing her creativity, the opportunity in which she has developed herself into this overall powerhouse for women, giving examples of ways of which she has been able to be so creative, not just through her music, but through the many talents that she shares to others, not only on her journey, but also growing as an individual, being able to help others see their own light, whether that is through piano playing or the poetry that she writes. I think that this is an important lesson for us that anything is possible, especially when we look at the creativity side of our brain, the influences of different types of tonal qualities. The music that we play really instills a different euphoric action that we are aroused to do, especially when it comes to the different types of things that we listen to, that we enjoy doing. The enthusiasm of the highs that we reach when we play a guitar, or even having that instrument of our choice, to even the lows. I think these are the things that are oftentimes looked beyond, not even considered, when we look at all the different various opportunities that we have to express ourselves. I think seeing this music and having it being played is why we see so many different people of all ages resonate with concerts, having that bond and connection over a variety of different types of music, whether that is alternative, whether that is screaming bands, which I know a few artists are doing as of late, and even playing across the world. Looking at the success of even artists like Taylor Swift makes me understand a lot more as to why these types of influencers, these people that like to play music, really are able to express themselves. But aren't we all musical players if you really think about it? The instruments that we play might not be of the traditional sense when you think of music, but seeing all these different composers, having all these different types of tools at our disposal, really gives us a light into the darkness that sometimes people go through, especially when we see that they are playing at a different venue, a different genre of music, or even just saying some things that might be helpful from a vocal capacity that allows us to see inside their soul. Now, if you really want to talk about how remote instruction might not work, this might not be the episode to do that, because Catherine is doing really well. You can see that from all the different experiences that she's been able to gauge, not only from the people that she has had as clients, but the indirect impacts, which, if you always think about what we've talked about in this show, it's always been about the individuals that are able to make that impact that goes beyond their own comfort zone. Which means if you build that consistency, if you build that direction within your own life, imagine what the consistency and direction it will be as it resonates across the world, just like music does for many different people. Never say never, then, to all these abilities that we can have by teaching. Teaching at its fundamental core is something that will allow us to keep on celebrating our skills, passing it on from one generation to the next, and being able to connect with others, celebrate their successes, no matter how old you are or how young you can be, in order to start picking up your own instrument and start playing along the way. I think that when we deconstruct music and we look at the ways in which they have different frequencies, tones, and abilities, when you look at music and even public speaking, you can see the interconnectivity and how much they're not as different as you might think. When we look at all the areas in our lives that we have to speak up for ourselves, The energy in which we even communicate on has a frequency that dictates how it will resonate with others. That's why, for hundreds of years, even thousands of years, if you go back that far in history, you can see that some of the basic, most simplistic instruments have been able to make a self-expression in so many different ways, just like how the first written language, which was really a bunch of pictures, has allowed us to see so many different things about our own lives as we have evolved as a human race. The discovery of being able to find that new music, being able to share that with others, is something that is really courageous. When we're able to share that strength, just like Catherine has in today's story, really shares not just what she's been able to accomplish, but also all the things that even as you come as you are enough. And now you see why I opened the show with that phrase. Catherine has really been able to come as she had been, despite everything that she has endured to get to where she is today. Especially with having 6 kids, I commend her for being able to find flexibility and creativity in helping people find the joy and passion of learning to play music and do so much more. But it is about finding what you really enjoy. It's the joy in itself that even if it's right, wrong, or indifferent, we have something that we should be able to say. Even if there is no standard that has been done before, we can be the pioneers that create that destiny for ourselves. We have a place at the table as long as we see the value that we can give to others and ourselves. Even if you do it wrong, even if you do it right, that existence means that we have to figure out what is right, what is wrong. Coaches have that ability to be able to find not only that pain point that you're experiencing, but it will help you to move towards that future that you're destined to have. It's no secret. Today's episode isn't just another success story in which we've been able to share so many of those of how people have been able to repurpose their lives to become much better than they would have ever thought possible. Catherine's story is just another example of how you can create various areas of growth, challenging your own self-image that you once held, and being able to journal, even find ways in which you can express yourself in music, become much better than you ever thought you could ever be. I think this is a reminder of why it's so important for us to continuously involve creating that cohesiveness in our life in which we are able to share and express and determine what influences, what different types of tones do we want to strike with others, and how that will resonate with our relationships, confidence, and determination to keep on creating wonderful music that for many people they like hearing. Now, if I heard some very miserable, non-influential music, do you think that I would follow with you forever? Probably not. That's why you have to constantly reevaluate. See if things that you're doing are working. Figure out if the people that you're growing with are really striking the right tone for you. Because even in this world in which we really want to have thriving interpersonal connection, we have to learn that sometimes those lessons that we learn, that consistency in that direction that we try to gain, means that we can never say never to the opportunities in which we're able to teach others to become much better. Pay attention to these details, especially of what Catherine has shared today, because you can learn so much about not only how you can create this writing for yourself, this ability to share your music, but you can come as you are, because you are enough to be able to learn and grow and evolve if you're willing to have the right mindset and strike the right musical chord. It doesn't always mean that you have to have the right note, and it's okay to make a mistake. As long as you're willing to self-express and discover what opportunities are out there, I think that anything is possible. But more importantly, there's something even more basic that we have to learn from today's story. It's about being able to exist in a place in which joy erupts. I would say that even for the longest time in my life, your podcast host really struggled with this. And still, there are days in which I struggled thinking that I would be able to hit the right note. But even then, when we figure out what it is that we have to say that so confidently is buried inside of ourselves, there is no standard in which we have to live up to. The only standard that we have to adore is ourselves. We have to always give music and love and appreciation to those that really need to listen to us the most. And sometimes that just starts with yourself. You can do wrong, but you can also do right. So there's always a choice every day that you wake up. Whether you want to play the song that you always wanted to play that might never end, and yes, that is a cue to a song that maybe you don't want to have in your head right now. But even then, even if that song does end, what would you want to be remembered by? Having that musical quality in which no one likes to hear because you're just always striking that wrong tone? Or are you willing to work on yourself, giving yourself that opportunity to grow, but yet more importantly, influencing all the qualities, all the frequencies, all the tonalities to become something better than you ever thought possible? The only thing that's standing in your way is your own enthusiasm. Are you willing to be more creative than you ever thought? Are you willing to explore that with someone that is willing to help you, regardless of where it is in your life? I think this is an opportunity for you to think and reflect that sometimes finding the ways in which we can spread joy, whether that is through our writings or our music, can have so much more impact than you might imagine. For all those musicians out there and for all those adoring writers, which every one of you are, keep on playing, keep on communicating, and keep on writing. I know that you'll make that breakthrough because let's face it, you already are in your own little world that will always be growing every time that you learn from right, learn from wrong, and you learn from each other. Thanks for listening to episode number 168 of Speaking from the Heart, and I look forward to hearing from your heart very soon.
Thanks for listening. For more information about our podcast and future shows, search for Speaking from the Heart to subscribe and be notified wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit us at www.yourspeakingvoice.biz for more information about potential services that can help you create the best version of yourself. See you next time.